more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you will go. Hello and a very good evening to all of you present here. I'm Khushi Patel, Public Relation Officer at Rait Acm. Along with me, I have Hemang Ranjan, Junior Tech Chief at Rait Acm. We would like to welcome you all to the day one of Ready to React, a 5-day live workshop organized by Rait Acm, where you will be taken through an amazing journey of JavaScript, the language that gives web pages interactive elements and makes everything even more attractive. We are glad to have you all, the learners, with us today. Whether you are a beginner or well versed with JavaScript, this workshop will surely benefit you, each and every one of you. Even if you haven't got your heart set on a tech career, being proficient in JavaScript language will enable you to build websites from scratch. A pretty useful skill to have in today's world. Throughout the workshop, we will take you through an engaging step-by-step approach to understand the JavaScript code. We will also be providing certificates after the workshop. Participants, please feel free to ask your questions to our speakers. You can also post your queries in the text channel. All questions of every participant will be answered during the workshop by our mentor. We will be having a Q&A session at the end.
Now, I would like to introduce you all to the speakers of the day. We have Mr. Krishna Dahake, who is currently the Tech Chief of Rait Acm and also a front-end developer intern at Sapio Analytics. He will be guiding us through the basics of web development. Along with him, we have Mr. Haridarshan Chaudhary, who is a full-stack developer and has completed numerous internships on React. He is currently working as a product engineer intern at Tealfy. Mr. Haridarshan is also winner of Equal to Perfection organized by Rait Acm, and he will be briefing us about JavaScript. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Hemang. Hello, guys. So I'm Krishna Dahake. I will be speaking about the basics of the web development and the fundamentals for it. So let's talk about the web development and its fundamental. So we all are well familiar with the web development and what the websites are. So we in day-to-day life we come in contact with the many websites. We use many websites. So each and every website has some the fundamentals. So the web is web is based on the internet. So internet is the large network of the, and also first of all we will see why to learn the web development. Okay, so we know that in day-to-day life we use the many websites. Even if our business is small or the big business, every business has their own website. All the companies also has their website. So there is a huge demand for the web developers and the web. The websites promotes us 24/7, not 24/7, but 12/36. Okay, so the websites always keeps us promoting, and so the websites are very crucial for each and every business. Also, you can see there are the very small businesses who who also have their websites, and also we can see that the services like the Airbnb, YouTube, etc. They started very small, with the small websites, but they grow up with the millions of with the business of the $1 billion. Okay, so before going to see about the web development, the very essential and the first thing is the infrastructure which supports or which technically provides technically make possible websites. So it is the internet. So we all know what is the internet. So the internet is the large network of the computers which helps us to communicate with each other. So on the internet, every one of us has a unique address, and we search for the various things we want. We get connected with everyone from the worldwide. Also, our businesses gets reach, and also we get the services from here. So we all know how these are the very basics, but these are really essential before we start with the web development. So we have the internet. On the internet, we do searches. We have the World Wide Web. there are the several websites which helps us, and there are the servers and databases which stores our data. So let's get this. Let's learn these fundamentals. Like let's see the fundamentals. So whenever you come on the browser, you search for some particular website. So what happens is like you go for that, you want particular website, you want particular address. Also on the internet, everyone has their unique address, that is the IP. Okay, so the IP is the address which, so it is basically the location where our website or a user is located. So when we click on the browser, so what happens is, so what is this IP? You might be wondering, so IP is basically it's basically just the address in this format. It's just the number. So this is just the location. But you will see, like if I want to communicate with the google.com, then google.com will have their own IP, and I will have to add this IP. I will have to visit this IP for reaching them. Also, if I wanted to reach like our website, Rait Acm's website, then there will be some different IP. So we also have this various IPs, and how will we know each other with these IPs? Like we can't just remember these IPs. So to rescue us with this, we have the domains. So actually, domains associates our IP address with one name, so that like we can have an address over the internet. So basically, the domains, like there is one IP address for a particular website, each website, and when we visit this address, we so our we use their domain, their name, domain to reach that particular website. So what actually happens when we click on particular website is when we click on particular website, so our browser puts one request for the server. So our browser search for the, like first of all it converts this domain name into a particular IP name. Then it search for the IP. Then there is one DNS. So DNS is basically like the address book where all the domains and IPs are listed. So basically, when we visit it, so from the when we visit some domain or some IP, when we want to go through some website, then the particular domains get the domain is searched from this DNS, and it puts request as HTTP request. So what is HTTP? So HTTP is hypertext transfer application. Sorry, transfer protocol. So basically, HTTP provides us the content and the assets of our website. Okay, so like when we get the response, like when we get the proper HTTP response, when we put the proper request, we get our website on our browser. So let's see how we can be the web developer, or like what are the fundamentals of the web development? What are the different fields or the things in the web development? So first of all, we will need to understand what are the basics of the internet, like how the things works. Then there are the front end and the back end. So what is the front end? Front end is basically the UI, or the user interface. When you visit any website, all the visible part, like whatever you see on the website, is called as front end. So when we order something, or when we put some request for the website, so our front end interacts with our back end, that is our server. So when our server searches data from the database, so these are the four fields which are must in web development. So like the front end, back end, and database. Then we have for the web development, we have the various paths. At the starting, we should start with HTML, CSS. We can make creative websites using HTML, CSS. Then we can then using the JavaScript, we can actually use the dynamic content. Like we can add the dynamicness to our website. Like using the HTML, CSS, we will just create some beautiful UI, or the UI, which will be the visible part. But the interactivity, like after clicking some buttons, what should happen? So like this interactivity comes with the JavaScript or the else other language. So like there are the various stacks which we can follow. Like there is one MERN stack. We can also follow for the front end. We can use HTML, CSS, and for the back end we can use Django using Python. Also there are, we can use the PHP. Also, so there are the many stacks which we can use. So like we can, so particularly in this series we are focusing on the JavaScript. So why JavaScript? So first it is like it is used for the dynamicness. It's then also there is one fact, like there are the 1.8 billion plus websites in the world, and out of those 95% of them uses JavaScript. So like whenever you want to do the web development, you can't just avoid JavaScript. So like JavaScript is very essential in the web development. This is because like the JavaScript also like we have the various the JavaScript is very versatile language. So this means like this picture explains it all. So like using the JavaScript, we can use the front end. Like there are the several libraries and frameworks like the React, Angular, Vue, etc., which can be used for the front end. Then we can use the JavaScript for server side also using the Node.js, which is the server environment. So using the Node.js, we can make the backend for our website using JavaScript. Then we can also do the app development using JavaScript itself. Like we have the React Native, so which helps us in forming like making the cross-platform apps which are capable of running on Android as well as iOS. Also, we can use JavaScript for the game development. Also, we can use the JavaScript for the modern techs like modern fields like the blockchain, IoT, AIML. And also the JavaScript has the huge community. Like the JavaScript is continuously evolving and like it's improving, and the day by day like the libraries and the frameworks are adding. So the using the JavaScript community is very big, and also the JavaScript is the trending currently. So like when you go on any jobs website, so you will see the maximum there is like the, as we all know, the JavaScript is the most popular language used. Like the various surveys and etc. has proved that JavaScript is also the most used scripting language. So in this sessions, we are planning to teach you the basics and also some advanced concepts of the JavaScript. So so for the next part, like covering the JavaScript concepts, I'm calling Haridarshan Chaudhary. Over to you, Hari. Haridarshan, you are mute.
I hope I'm audible now, right?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah, good. So like there comes a question like why JS? Why only JavaScript? If I want to learn web development, I do have like a lot of options like Django, Flask and stuff. Well, they can also do some front-end stuff using template syntax and stuff. Then why JavaScript? Well, when I started, then this was a question for me too. And later I realized that JavaScript is not just for web. It can do a lot of different things. You can use it as Node.js to write servers. You can use it as React Native to write hybrid apps. And just for sake of trivia, like VS Code is built using JavaScript. You can Google it if you want to know. And Microsoft Teams is also built using JavaScript. So JavaScript is something which is like very much dynamic, at the same time very much flexible, and you can do a lot of stuff. And apart from that, JavaScript is not a new language. It's like almost over 20 years now, and JavaScript it has a huge community. If you want to learn something, if you want to innovate something, then you're surely going to get some help on the internet or stuff to learn stuff about JavaScript. So that's why like JavaScript is one of the safest bet. And apart from that, like we also have TypeScript, React, such things which are made like built over JavaScript. So basically, that's the reason that why you should learn JavaScript. Now, another question that I like come across is do I need to know Java to learn JavaScript? Well, a simple answer to it is like the relation between JavaScript and Java is same as the relation between carpenter and car. So just the names align, and it was kind of a marketing strategy, but it has nothing to do with Java. So now let's just jump into the code. And what do you need to learn JavaScript or just start with JavaScript? So basically, you need an HTML file and then a script tag, and script tag is going to contain the name of your JS file, and that's it. That's basically it to start with JavaScript, at least start with JavaScript. So you might have seen that there are a lot of comments here. So these are basically just to like maintain the flow, and we will go through these comments, and at the same time we'll write some code and understand stuff there. So the first thing that the first thing which is very famous in this programmer community is how do I write hello world in JavaScript? So in any other language like C or something, you would have come across like you want to import a lot of header files and stuff. And in JavaScript, you can just have console, simply pass the string you want to print. And I'm using VS Code with like Go Live extension. So whenever I save, it would be like auto saved. And this is something in the console. If you see, we have hello world. So that's it. Like we have completed our first program, maybe. Also, there are like numerous other ways. I prefer console because the developer tools of Google Chrome or any other browser, they are going to help you a lot, and we will be covering some stuff from this too. So other way that people do follow is simply they put up a alert and string here. So now if I go to this, it simply says that hello world. So we'll continue like doing stuff in the console only because it's quite better. As I told, that we have a lot of developer tools which can help us understand JavaScript better. Now this is first thing that I want you to note, that JavaScript executes the code line by line. So the line numbers here, which are indicated like the line numbers indicated by VS Code, it's going to execute line by line. For example, the line number 4 will be executed first, and then line number 5. So JavaScript executes all the stuff line by line. Now let's get more into coding, like what are variables, values, and types. So for people who don't know what are variables are basically, you can assume them as boxes which can store values for you. But in JavaScript, there's a bit more complexity added to it. We have 3 things with us, which is basically variables, values, and types. So what are variables, what are values, and what are types, right? So a variable is basically a name that you can give to like variable is kind of a tag name. For example, if you have a dog, you can name a dog something, right? And the value is the actual value that is being held. So for example, a variable name can be anything. You can declare a variable name. You'll see how one can declare a variable name. It can be A, B, C, anything. Like it can be anything. So variables are something which are going to store your values. In JavaScript, it's more like variables are something that is going to point to your values. Now values can be any stuff like a string, with some name like bat or something. And we have to, there's one important thing, like values will have some types, and that types are like, there are some predefined primitive types and some non-primitive types in JavaScript. So for example, this is bat, and this can this is a string type variable. Sorry, string type value, because variables don't have values. Okay. So one more important point that you have to notice, it's a bit confusing, but in JavaScript, values have types. Variables don't have types. Yeah, it's very important to note it. Like in JavaScript, values have types and variables don't have types. So now what types can a value have? Like, so there are primitive types and non-primitive types. So in primitive types, we have number. So number basically like 5, 4, anything like a numerical value, and also some special numbers in JavaScript, which are nan and infinity. So what is nan? Nan is actually not a number. So it was like made so that JavaScript would follow some mathematical equations strictly. And another thing is infinity. So for example, if any other language, if you divide by 0, you would get an exception that you are dividing by 0, but in JavaScript, you are going to get a value which is infinity. So the another type is string. String is basically something written in single or double quotes. So anything written in single or double quotes is a string. For example, bat and cat, other stuff. So these are basically something. These are strings. And Boolean, like Boolean is just going to have two values. Either it's going to be true, either it's going to be false. So we have like two values here: true, false, and move to the next type. This is symbol. We would be covering this in like future, because this is not that important currently, because it's used for more advanced stuff. And another type is null. So null is also a primitive type. When there's a funny property of null too, which we will. There's a funny property of null too, which we'll like see soon. And finally, we have like undefined. Currently, if you don't have any ideas about the types, so don't worry, we are going to cover this in the forward, like more sessions to come, and some of them will be covered like in this session only. And other than that, we have non-primitive types. So the non-primitive type is, in JavaScript, we have a non-primitive type, which is object. And that object contains different types of objects. Like we can have functions, arrays, date, regular expressions. Now there might be a question like, but functions should be something native to a language, right? In any other language, we see that functions are something native, but in JavaScript, that's not the case. In JavaScript, you can say almost everything in JavaScript is a function. Yeah, you can note that if you want. So now we come up with like variables, right? So what is a variable? So as I told you, variable is something which is going to point to a value. So variable is something which is going to point to a value, and that value is going to have type. We will be covering some examples so that this thing is like understood properly. So now let's come down to declaration of variables. That how do I declare variable? How do I see all this in action in actual JavaScript? So there are three ways of declaring a variable in JavaScript, like, or we can say there are three syntax. They all come with their limitations and with the pros and cons. So the first thing is like you can use a var keyword and then assign the name. As I told you that we have a variable and the variable is going to have a name. So let's say we say it's name, and then it's completely optional if you want to like assign a value to the variable just yet. So if you want to assign the value to the variable just yet, you can do that. If you don't want to assign it, that's also fine. So we'll assign it just now. So I have assigned var name is equal to bat. Right now, if I console.log, because this is how we print stuff, right? And I pass in name, more generic, my name. Cool. So if I pass in my name here, and if I go to my console, we'll see there's a bat printed here. So what happens behind the scenes, right? So for that, we can inspect stuff. We can place a debugger at this position where console.log name is there. And I can just refresh it and it would stop the execution at the line number 43. And at the line number 43, you'll see that there's something called as global. What is this? So this is called window. It's a global object called window. So for browser, for example, this is the browser window, right? And this window is going to contain a lot of stuff, right? So if I open it up, then I'm going to see a lot of stuff here, a lot of stuff which would be like displayed here. And if I scroll down and go for my name, you will see that there's a variable called my name, and that's assigned a value bat. Okay, so what happens? Yeah, yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I had a doubt. When you wrote name, I did not accept. Like you had to change it to my name.
No, I don't have to change it. Okay, I'll just explain that too. So if I write name, so name is something which is assigned to the window for like different purposes already. But if I do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to overwrite the name. So it's going to print the, like the execution will be proper. That we won't have any problem with the execution. It would be bad. But what we did is we actually overrided a value which was allotted for some other purpose, right? And that's something that you shouldn't do, right? So that's why I changed the name to like my name. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
So let's go back to sources. Put the debug again and reload this. So now if I scroll down, you'll see that there's so there's my name, which is going to contain a value bat, and this is name is equal to bat because we just overrid it, and like this was a pitfall because name was something that was already allotted to the window and it was allotted for some other purposes, and we actually override it, and it's going to contain like bat until this program executes, and that's not a good sign, right? Okay, so I stored a value var my name as bat. So now there's one important thing that you should note, and that is all. Okay, I'll just cover it later. Let's just go on to declare more variables with different syntax. There's one more keyword which is let. This is not a part of JavaScript. This was introduced in 2015, and at that time, like JavaScript was generalized, and its name was quite more generalized to ECMA script 2015, which was ES6. Currently, we do have ES2L and stuff. I guess ES11 is the current version going on. So from ES6, we had like let as a keyword, which would help us to declare a variable. Now, there should be a question that why, if we had var already, what was the need of let? And like there are some pros and cons for var. That is something which we will cover in tomorrow's session, so just stay tuned for it. So now I'll just create a name, make sure that it's not the same name, or else it's going to be. Well, actually, you can have the same name because this is going to be stored into this different closure. Okay. I passed in a new name, and now I'll just call it something like that. And if I try to console.log, console.log new name, I'll just skip the debugger here, remove the debugger, and go to the console. And you can see that we have bat, we have cat, and you can also see the line numbers here, like the line number 43 printed it, and line number 47. Now, there's one more way to declare a variable. Okay, that is using const. Now, this is something very much strict. Like var is something which is not that much strict. Let is stricter than var, and const is a lot stricter than all of them. the above, like var and let. Let's say I assign a new name here. Call it something like that. Okay. And I log this up, like what's another name? If I go here, I'll see that rat is printed here. Now let's see like some common differences here. So in terms of const, if I don't put a value, like in terms of const, if I don't put a value, it's going to give me an error, because I told you that const is something very much strict. It's something that we want to be constant throughout our program. So, and errors in JavaScript like really tell a lot of information. So missing initializer in const declaration. And the reason was like we didn't initialize it to something. Let's just go back to that. But in case of let and stuff, I will not console.log it yet because it's a Easter egg for further sessions. So if I define like let new name here, then it won't give me any error. Even if I refresh, it's not going to give me an error, because let allows you to declare a variable and maybe initialize it sometime, like somewhere else. Yeah. And now, if I remove that here, and again, I'll just console comment it because it's an Easter egg for further sessions. And if I refresh it, you'll see that there's no error. So that's like completely fine. So now the next point, that is JS is like JavaScript is a loosely typed language. If you have like typed, if you have coded in C++ or Java or something, you'll see that we have a syntax, and in that syntax, what we do is we kind of already declare that what type of variable this is. But I told you already that variables in JavaScript don't have time. I'm repeating it, I guess, for the fourth time, but it's that important. So variables in JavaScript don't have a type, but values in JavaScript do have a type. So JS is loosely typed language. For example, if I say let new name, let's say let new name, and this is initialized to cat. I'll console.log it here, and now I'll say that let's change new name to something else, like car or something. Yeah. So if I do this and console.log it here, we'll see that there's cat printed, there's car printed. Well, there's a simpler way to do this thing, like so that you are also know that what name it is. But I guess we shouldn't use it because this is something. This is a concept called object destructuring and constructing an object and destructuring, but we haven't covered it yet, so let's not use it. So I'll just put an informative statement to here. So this is line 47, and now at line 47 we have that value as cat. At line 56 we have the value as car. So it was kind of expected, like we changed the value, right? But what if I say that this is, let's change this and set it to 8? What do you expect to see? Like any guesses in the chat or something? What do you expect to see here? Oh, can you explain later again? Krishna, can you just tell me, like, I want you to read the chats, okay? So can you guess like what would be the value printed? Shubham said the value should be 8. Any guesses, any more guesses? Okay, cool. So congratulations, Shubham. This is exactly right. Like it would be printed 8. But like this is a bit confusing, right? But as I told you already, that I'll just write it here, that variables in JavaScript don't have types. So this variable new name can have any type of value. It can be a string, it can be a number, it can be like any value. It can be any value from this, like it can be a Boolean value. So let's why not if we can do this? Let's say if I just tell it true. So now what you expect, what would be the value? Like if you can write it in the chat, what would be the value at line number 56? Any guesses? True. So I got one guess. Any other guesses? True. Just two people get it. Okay. Now I see a lot of responses. Oh, it's this one. Okay, cool. So I see that few people think that it's going to be true, and they are absolutely right, because variables in JS don't have types, and this can be any type. You can kind of replace this anywhere. But now there's one more important point that you have to note here. That is, primitive values are immutable. And let's check the example. Let's check an example here. So what do I mean by primitive values are immutable? Let's say this is new name, and I'll console new name and pass in an index of 0. So what this is going to do is it's going to get this new name thing, which is here. It's going to take the string, and since I've passed the 0th index, so in most of the programming language, we have the index base as 0. So it starts from the 0th number. The 0th number is basically C here. So this should print C on our console. And if we check it, this is just going to print C. Now, let's say I'll just do new name of 0, which is going to get that particular thing, C, and then I'll replace it with something else. I'll replace it with something like B. So what do you expect here? What do you expect this to be? I'll just take it down so that it's visible in the screen. So what it is, I declared a variable new name. I console.logged new name here, and this eventually returned C. Then I took the 0th number, the 0th index of the string, and I replaced it with B. So what should be the value here? Are there any guesses in the chat? So what do you expect this to print? What do you expect this to print? This is new name, we get cat, then I console.log new name of 0, this returns C, then I say new name.0 to be B. What is this going to do? Cool, bat, I see bat. Okay, there are a lot of bats, right? So congratulations everybody, but this time you're wrong because okay, so that is the crazy part here. Primitive values are immutable. In any other language, if it was C or Java or any other language, it would allow you to change this stuff. But in case of JavaScript, it's not going to allow you to change this, and it is going to print cat again because primitive values are immutable. Now this is second most important things. Now there's something which is also asked in interviews, and a lot of people don't know that primitive values in JavaScript are immutable. So any primitive value, since cat is a string, which is a primitive value, which we covered here, that cat, bat, these are strings. Even if I want to change this, I'm not able to change this. But isn't it stupid? Like I say like new name of 0 and I change it to B, and it kind of ignores it. I don't even have an error thing. Like it doesn't throw an error. JavaScript knows that what I'm doing. The interpreter knows what I'm doing. Then why it is not pointing me in the right direction? So the reason is that we are operating it in a normal mode kind of stuff. But if I put a use strict at the start of my file or at the start of my function, it's going to catch all the soft errors and it will console me all the soft errors. So for example, this thing is a soft error that I can't change a primitive value. So if now I go to console, it's going to say me like it's an error. It's an error on line number 61 because you cannot assign to read-only property. So we have this use strict thing, which kind of tells the interpreter that you have to compile this code in a strict manner, and this is going to catch all the soft errors. This is going to catch all the soft errors and turn them into like throwable errors, which are consoled here, so that I'm always towards the right. So that I'm always in the right direction. I hope you understand that. So for now, like I want it to ignore stuff so that we do make mistakes and we do learn stuff. So basically, this code is kind of ignored, right? So now let's move ahead. Now there's one thing, there's one concern, right? Like as I said, variables in JS don't have types, and values do have types. But I told that it's a loosely typed language. A new name at certain point can be cat, a new name at certain point can be 8. How do I even know it? Like, how do I even know it when it is cat and when it's 8? Because let's say I want to do some arithmetic operation with this new name, or let's give it a generic value. Let's say it's a 1. It's going at some point it's going to have cat. At some point it's going to have 8. But I want to make sure that this is number, and if it's number, I want to do some calculation with it. I want to do some arithmetic operations with it. So how do I know that what type of value this variable is holding? So now we come across type of operator. So if I console.log type of 1, like basically it's kind of querying the JavaScript compiler that what is the type of value which is stored in this variable. So since the latest value is a number, this should indeed return me a number. And the return values are basically strings. The return values are basically strings, and the values of the strings are like number, string, boolean, accordingly. So if I go to my console, okay, sorry, I'll just remove this new name because I've changed it to 1. So it's going to return me a number. Yeah, it did return me a number. So if I console, let's say I print it like at this moment. Now this type of can also be used within parentheses. So and it's print string. So basically it was string at line number 60, at line number 66, at line number 60 it's string, at line number 66 it's number. And if I kind of change the value as 2 or something, and then again print it at line number 69, then it would be like returning me boolean. So till this point, we have covered what are variables, what are values, what are types, and the most important points that we covered up is that variables in JavaScript don't have types. Then JavaScript is a loosely typed language, and also values have types in JavaScript. Now let's come to let's do some common arithmetic operations. For example, let's say these are like some basic arithmetic operations, addition, subtraction, and stuff. So let's say I want to do 5 plus 5, and it's quite expected that this is going to come 10, and it's obviously going to come 10. So it's 10 printed up here. I can like do some common arithmetic operations here, whether it's like subtraction. I'll just do it like in the same console. Then multiplication. This is going to like print us what we expect, 5 minus 2, 3, and find it to 10. So these are like some arithmetic operations. But then yet again, let's say like these are something that I told that it's 5, it's a number which is 5, and I added 5 to it. But what if they are stored in variables, let's say? So let 1, and the value is 5. And then let's value 2, which is 5. And I just want to console value 1 multiplied by value 2 by value 2, and I'll just comment out these stuff. So I did a typo. This should be value. This is as expected, like 25. Now there's an interesting question over it. Like as I told you already that okay, these value 1 and value 2 can be anything. It can be a string or like anything. It can be anything. So what if I do this like, if I say that value 1 is not a number, it's a string of 5. What do you expect? What do you expect here? Like any guesses? Any guesses? Any guesses here? What do you expect here? We have value 1, we have value 2, and basically multiply value 1 by value 2. Error. Cool. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Oh, great. Love that answer. 5s. 5s. Okay. Basically 5 5s. Okay. Any more guesses? Any more guesses? Come on, man. It's not a problem if you're wrong, because at one point we all were wrong. 5 ASCII value into. Oh, crazy. Any more guesses? Any more guesses? Error. Okay. So Hemang, well, that's a good answer, like 5 ASCII value into 5. But what if the number is 5,347? What if the value, like the string is 5,447? 25. Cool. So Yanshu, you got it right. We have the value as 25. So why this is happening? Why this weird stuff is happening? So this is something called type coercion in JavaScript. And what is type coercion? Type coercion, simply said, it's like converting the types from one type to another. Like for example, converting a string. For example, converting a string to a number. So at some moment, like we might feel that the JavaScript compiler is so dumb, doesn't understand a lot of things, but it does understand a lot of things. It actually always tries to convert it in a more tries to convert all the variables into all the values, tries to convert all the values in the right type, like something which would be expected. An error, well, in any other language it would be an error, but in case of JavaScript we don't really have this won't be an error. Even if I use strict, it won't be an error. So type coercion basically means changing the types of the variables. Like in this example, what we did is value 1, which was a string, it was converted to a number so that it could be multiplied. And there are like a set of rules, which using which you can predict that what it would be, like what it would become, and it's also confusing a bit. So what if I do value 1 plus value 2? What do you expect now? What if it's value 1 plus value 2? This is 25, we know this. This is 25 to know. What do we expect? 55. Any other guesses? 10, 10. Any other guesses? So let's not wait and do. Oh, sorry. So the problem was that this is not a valid code. That's why it's an error. So now if we go, it's going to print 55. Yeah, maybe like you would want to bang your head because like how this makes sense. Value 1, which was a string, and then into value 2, it was like 25. It converted into a number. And then when value 1 was a string and then we did like plus value 2, it converted into a string. So like how this makes sense. So yeah, this is like, these are some of the confusing part. So that's why what we do is like whenever you want to be sure that I want this to be a value only, I don't want this to be any other thing. What I do is basically wrap that variable like since I want this to be a number, I wrap it into a number. Now this would return me 10 because I tried to like convert it into a value, and it would like try to convert it into a value. If that's not possible, then JavaScript like. So next thing is like, since we converted it into a number, we can also do vice versa, like converting a number into a string. And at the same time, we can also use other types too. For example, console.log, and if I do boolean of 1, so any positive value in boolean returns a true only. So we'll cover it in this session forward. We'll learn about truthy and falsy values. So let's move ahead. I hope like you, yeah.
Can you please explain that why we were getting 55?
Okay. So why we were getting 55? So first thing is that it's something which is like written into JavaScript only, because JavaScript is written using C++. Like not using C++. In runtime, JavaScript runs in a runtime, kind of a runtime, which is this browser, and all these rules and stuff are written in C++ for Chrome. It's called the V8 engine, which is super fast and compiles JavaScript into like C++ code, which is then again compiled to machine like machine readable code, and we get the answers to it. So it's sort of a rule that whenever we get a string and we want to add this up, it kind of does the most suitable thing. For example, if this was like some other string or some bigger string, and if I want to add this, I don't want to lose the data. Like it was built in that way. There's no special explanation to this. Like, okay, this is the logic and this is the thing. This was like basically how it was created. So like in any case, if we add a string, so that is just going to convert the number into the string, because let's assume like it's not number, it's something else, like string. So that is something which is more suitable to them, right? Okay, this cannot be converted into number, but like there are more chances that a number is going to be converted into a string rather than a string being converted into a number. Like a string like this, what would be like, what we would interpret out of it, like what would be the value. So basically that's something which is logic, like not a logic, but like a rule. I'll just share a link. Basically, I'll create a PDF to compile all the set of rules there and share it on Discord, so that once you refer it, that's something like, after that you don't have to worry about any logic or stuff. So till this time we were like, okay, it's already 6:30. So till this time we were doing stuff with variables, values, and types, and we do have like some sort of understanding of what are variables, what are values, what are types in JavaScript. Also, why also JavaScript is a loosely typed language where variables don't have types, values have types and stuff. And if you want to know a type of the value stored in a variable, we use the typeof operator. Now let's move ahead and let's do some like code some loops. So I guess like most of you would be like familiar with loops. So the syntax for loop is very much similar to any other language. Just the declaration part is different. So let's say let I equals 0, I plus plus, sorry, I should be less than 5 for, and here I console.log I. So this would just print number from 0 to 4, which was like expected. So we'll like play more with for loops when we have learned arrays, because at that moment it would make more sense. Why do we want to do for loop? Like this is stupid, right? From going from 0 to 4, this doesn't make sense. But if we have a set of values and we want to iterate through those set of values, then at that time it would be like something useful, and we'll cover that in coming sessions. Stay tuned. Another popular loop is the while loop. So the while loop accepts a condition, like if I say I less than 5 or something, I less than 5, I declare a I here. So and console.log and incremental. So what this is going to do is it's going to compare it again and again, and until this condition is true, this is going to run again and again. And once this condition becomes false, it is going to break out of this loop, and as expected, again returns the same value. Sorry, there's a problem. We didn't. Let's just comment it so that we don't get confused. So I initialized it with 0. I compared it. Since it's true, it's going to run it again and again until at a moment when we are incrementing it and it actually becomes 5, which is not less than 5. So, and it would exit out. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just a minute, I'll be back. Yeah. So this was like while loop. There's one more variant, which is do while loop, which basically says that you can run it at least once and then you can check the condition. So and then you can write the condition here, which is I less than 5 or something, and this is going to give you the same result. But it's useful when you want to like run it at least once. If you want to run it at least once, then you can use this, and so that the condition, like the checking of the condition happens at least once the loop is run. Now let's come to like conditionals. So we have like two conditionals in JavaScript, which is if and switch. which is if and switch. So basically you can in the if you can basically type any condition that you want to check. That, for example, if you want to check like 4 is less than 8, then this code will come inside this block only if this condition is true. So if I say console.log happens, and if I go here, it says that it happens. And with if, there's also one thing that you can use, which is else. So what if this value is false? What if this value is false? If that value is false, that is going to enter this block. And let's say is happens here. So happens here won't be printed since this condition is true. So this enters the first block. But let's put a false condition and it would print happens here. So these are if this is if condition, and you can also have if ladder. For example, else another condition, which is something else, like another condition like 2 greater than 3. Now this makes sense when we have a value, like when we have value stored into a variable and we want to check that whether this condition is satisfied, whether this condition is satisfied, and whichever condition is satisfied, we'll just like enter into that condition. Another alternative to this is using switch, which is going to like take in switch you pass the variable which you want to check. Let's say you want to check val, and I want to say that val is 2 here, and here you can have case, like you can have different cases. For example, what if val is 1, what to do when val is 1. So I'll say console.log, I'll just console.log val, and what if it's 2, then this would console.log val. You can have a default. Okay, there's one problem here. Okay, I'll just show you. I'll run this code. I know this is wrong, so let's just run this code. So like case 3 console.log. Okay, and if I run this, you see it's 2, but at the same time it's high. Like, why is this happening? So this happens if you forget the break statement. Like if this case is satisfied, you want to run that code, you want to simply break it. Like you want to break out of this conditional statement. So if I pass a break here, then it would just display 2. It won't enter here because since we have a break, it breaks out from this position. One more thing is like you can have a default value here. Like what if none of the cases are satisfied? So what to do then? You can console, yes, we can do some operations here too. So if I make this value something 8 or something, it would run the default condition, which is bad luck. Now this can be used if a very simple example would be, what if I want to know the name of the month based on the number. So like for case 1, it would say that this is January, and for case 2, February, and those stuff. So if I say that if val is 1, then that would print January. So at that, like it is an example like where you can apply this switch case. Now we have done like a lot of comparisons above here in if conditions and while in the while loop. So let's have a closer look to comparisons. So we basically have some comparisons like less than, greater than. So I guess like it's already 6:40. And where do we end a line with semicolon in JS? Oh, see, semicolon is not mandatory. If you want to write code in JavaScript, semicolon is not mandatory. You can write a semicolon. If you don't want, you won't write a semicolon. It would like create a problem if you are writing a lot of code in the same line. Then that is going to create a problem. For example, if you write like if 4 is greater than 5, and you want to console.log something. And at the same time, you want to return something. Then this is not possible, because that would give you an error. Now you have to write a semicolon which would indicate the end of the line. But other than that, if you are writing it in a standard way, then it's not important, but it's generally a best practice, like a good practice to write semicolons. Okay, I guess we can wrap it up for today. We can continue tomorrow. If you have any further questions, then you can ask, and or else we'll end it up. Yeah, any questions, please? You're free to ask. Any questions? Or else just give me a confirmation in the chat, no questions. Okay. Don't call me sir. No, it's just fine. No questions. Cool. If you are having any question, then just ask it, or we'll just wrap it up. Do we have to fill something for attendance? Not attendance. We have a short quiz, but I guess it won't be rolled up today because we have few topics left to cover. So maybe like we'll have these tomorrow. Anyways, how was the session according to you all? If you want to give any sort of feedback, Krishna, do we have a feedback form or something?
Yes, at the time of quiz, we will be providing you the feedback form. So please do attend the quiz and also do give the feedback there. Also, if you like the session, then take the screenshot of it and also share in the public so that the more and more people will get the benefits of this.
Tag it, tag Rait Acm, tag Krishna, tag me.
Also, you can also solve the quiz from our Insta, like on our Insta Rait Acm. We are also posting quizzes, so you can check it out also.
I hope you learned something.
So guys, if you have any doubt, then you can post it anytime on our Discord channel. We will provide it the details answers there.
So I guess Krishna, we can wrap it up now. We don't have any questions.
Yes, over to you, Hemang.
Often what we do is not just an act, but a habit which eventually leads to excellence. On this note, we would like to conclude today's session by expressing our gratitude towards our speakers, Mr. Haridarshan Chaudhary and Mr. Krishna Dahake, for honoring us with their time and presence. Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with all the valuable knowledge and information. I would like to express my gratitude to the Principal of RIT, Dr. Mukesh Patel, and HOD of IT Department, Dr. Ashish Yadav, sir. Our heartfelt thanks to all the participants for tuning in and keeping the session interactive. We hope you enjoyed today's session. Do not forget to follow us on Instagram to get updates regarding these and many more workshops. Let us all meet tomorrow for day 2 of Ready to React. Till then, keep learning, keep coding. Thank you.